test of the audio. And they would be armed just with arresting powers.
Testing, testing.
Our own.
Thanks, Randy.
Right. They would be armed, but wouldn't have those.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the School Safety and Security Community Forum. My name is Al Moyer, and I'm the acting superintendent, and it's my privilege to get things kicked off tonight. Before we get started, there is a picture I'd like to show you from yesterday morning at about 5 a.m. I just want to take a moment and say a big thank you to Chief Scott Miller, who is a fairly new Borough Chief of Police. I had been working with him most of the day on Sunday, and then also very early Monday morning. We, as most of you know, we had a threat that came to our email through our Facebook account through the school. A pretty serious threat. We believed it was a hoax and didn't have a lot of credibility, but we live in a day and age where we got to take everything seriously. So we certainly did. So we had dogs going through the buildings very early in the morning. We had a number of police officers from all over the place, all over the region, state police, university police. We had Dauphin County, York County, Chambersburg, Carlisle represented. And I just want to say publicly a big thank you to Chief Scott Miller and the Gettysburg Borough Police and the job that they did, a very thorough job of making sure that our students and staff are safe. Next slide, Sherry. So tonight we have 4 members of a panel, including myself, Christy Lentz from the business office. She's our chief bean counter in the district, and she is as sharp as they come when it comes to looking at the finances. She's going to be sharing a little bit about a comparison of a couple of different options that we're looking at in getting safety and security personnel into our building. And by the way, let me just say this before we even go much further. The entire intent tonight of running this first community forum, and my understanding is I am the 8th, even though I'm an acting superintendent, I am the 8th superintendent that has somehow, some way, shape, or form has had this on their agenda. It was built, the position was built into the budget, it had been discussed, and it had pretty much really hasn't gone anywhere in that regard. So this has been an issue for quite some time. I do believe this is the first time we've ever run a community forum. I do believe that this is the first time, based upon my sources, that we've actually taken a look at some consultants and some options for providing personnel that would come into the school. But I think the board would really like to hear from any of you as soon as our panel is done with their brief presentations regarding any concerns you have in support or any concerns you have that you're really concerned about on the negative side of having armed personnel in our buildings. Besides Christy, we have Mr. David Lindemuth here at the high school. He's one of 3 members of the counseling team here. Probably, I'll stack this counseling team up at the high school with any counseling team in the state of Pennsylvania. I think they're just that terrific. And Dave is a liaison to many of our first responders in the entire region. He also, in addition to being a high school counselor, he serves as our chief of school security here. And then Mrs. Sherry Woodall is our director of curriculum instruction and assessment. Sherry is a workhorse. Whenever I need to get anything done and need to get it done in a high-quality manner, she's the one I call upon. Sherry has some really good information relative to a federal grant through the ESSER funding, which is an acronym that I forget exactly what it stands for. Sherry can share that. Through the federal government to the state government to the schools, regarding funds that we can use for this for a temporary period of time. The proposal that we end up with regarding whatever option we go with, we pretty much would have that funded, at least for the first year, that we would add security personnel if that's what the board would decide to do in the end. Then also, we have several subcommittees on our school board. And the Subcommittee for Safety and Security is Mrs. Stephanie Eberly. She's under the weather tonight, but she promised me she is tuning in by live stream, along with about 300 other people, right, Troy? I think you said. And then we have Mr. Levi Kressler, who is here tonight. Levi is back there. And then we also have Mr. Fred Scott, who is also here tonight. That's part of our safety and security team. And as you know, it's fantastic having someone who's an expert like that on our committee with the great job that Fred has done as our chief of police. When I was here 14 years ago, we had a strong relationship then, and I've really appreciated his support during my almost 5 months as the acting superintendent. We also have a few other board members here tonight. Mrs. Becky Wolfinger is right up here. Becky, if you raise your hand. Mr. Dwayne Burt and Mr. Charlie Suiters. I saw your hand up there, Dr. Goetz, so I thought I'd play a trick on you. And Dr. Nathan Goetz is here. And I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. And then we have several of our school principals, administrators in the back. They seem to like that area. I thought about moving them up here and mandating that, but I thought, no, they're pretty comfortable back there, so we'll let them back there. But I do expect that throughout the evening that they may want to share a few of their thoughts as well. So that's the team. Eventually, what we would like to do is, after we've studied this issue, and we've been studying it quite a lot over the past couple of months and during my short tenure here as a temporary acting superintendent, we've had a couple of options that we're looking at. So Sherry, I think that's on the next slide. We have a proposal from the Shippensburg Borough Police and Chief Scott Miller. He has come and he has shared with us in executive session some of the specifics regarding that. We also have taken a look at a private company called Geforce. Mr. Bob Gano is a former state trooper who has started his own private contracting business of private security. They're in a lot of school systems in the entire region, and they did a presentation for us. And then finally, we had Chief Gary Carter from the Chambersburg School District, who I happened to work with a few months last year and got to know him. He is the chief of police for Chambersburg, and he talked about the option of creating your own police force. Many school districts have moved in that direction. So we're looking at really 3 options here moving forward that are possibilities. I don't think, and even though I'm number 8 dealing with this issue, I don't think we have investigated this issue to this degree in the past, from what I understand. So one of the things that Mr. Lindemuth is going to do to wrap up the panel's brief talk with you is to share a little bit about, here at the high school, some of the scenarios that Dave and the rest of our counselors and administrators and our professional staff are dealing with, that I think will help you to understand the urgency behind us needing to do something. In my opinion, doing nothing is not an option. We need to move forward and we need to do something. Whether it's one of these 3 options or something else, I'm going to share right up front, I have some personal, very strong opinions because I've got 40 years in the field, and with that experience and so on, and seeing a lot of things along the way, you seem to develop some beliefs about certain things, and I truly believe we're probably overdue here at Shippensburg to make something happen in this regard, my personal opinion. As to which way we go, what we would like to do, the leadership team here at this school plans to, after this event, get together again with our Safety and Security Subcommittee of the board and see if we can come to consensus and then make a recommendation to the full board to get something approved. And the way it works with our board is that we like to put it on as a discussion item, the proposal as a discussion item first, and then move it to an action item if it can move in that direction, if there's enough support for that. Obviously, we need at least 5 school board members to agree with the recommendation of our subcommittee and our leadership team. But that's what we would like to see happen. And when we are done sharing with you here this evening, and these are brief presentations, we would really like to hear from the community. We'd really like to hear your thoughts one way or the other on that issue. Sherry, Dave, Christy, administrators, board members, did I miss anything that ought to be said before I turn things over to, and I think it's Sherry going next.
I just say, I'm trying to figure out which way is mute and which way is on. I just clarify my title. I don't know, what did it say back there?
Chief of Security.
Safety. I'm Chief of Safety. So we're looking for security folks. I'm Chief of School Safety. So basically my job is liaison between local police, fire, and EMS. I happen to be the emergency management coordinator for the Borough of Shippensburg. So I'm going to a lot of those meetings already with the counties and the different departments and whatnot. So I just want to clear that out there. I'm not providing security services per se.
Sorry, Dave, gave you the wrong title. So I wanted to talk real quick about the Pccd funding and background information. So this is the money that Dr. Moyer was talking about that came from the federal government. So the federal government passed different bills giving states and school districts various money called ESSER money. This year, the state, Governor Wolf, and the legislature in the budget allocated $152,400 of their federal money that was given to them from ESSERs to school districts specifically to look at school safety and security. So these funds were put into this year's budget, but they're able to be spent during the 2022, 2023, and 2023-2024 school year. And it's placed in a bucket, so we as the district were guaranteed this money. It's a non-competitive grant, but we have to spend it on certain things. So the state says, here's your money, but you can only spend it on certain items. So when we look at those items and what the grant requires, there are 3 tiers that the school has to cover. We have to cover everything in tier 1 before we can start looking at items in tier 2. And then you have to cover everything in tier 2 before you can start looking at items in tier 3. For school entities, like for us, an SRO in the district is considered a tier 1 expenditure. So we can't spend our money on anything in tier 2 and tier 3 until we receive an SRO because that's in tier 1. And that's very quickly the Pccd money. And Christy, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Good evening. So as for the cost analysis being presented this evening, these are base estimates only, and they are for one security officer for each of the 3 different scenarios that Dr. Moyer introduced earlier this evening.
I promised Christy I would share this before she started, and I broke my promise. With each one of these options, there are several variables, and it ends up being a little bit complex. Do we want this person to be doing administrative work? Do we want this person to be doing training and running a seminar or doing some tabletop scenarios? Do we want this person to be doing event coverages for us? And there's 6 or 7 other variables I won't mention tonight, but one of the things or the challenges that Christy has in doing a very thorough cost comparison is that there are a number of variables. So that's why, to some degree, it's a very difficult and challenging situation that I put Christy in. But if anyone can do it and bring it down to a little bit less complex, she's the one who can do it. But I did want to make sure and share that before Christy went any further, because we've asked her to do a pretty challenging thing. Thanks, Christy.
Welcome. So as Dr. Moyer just said, these costs may need to be refined based on the final determination of the job duties and scope of work, such as administrative duties, after-school event coverage. Please note that the costs that you're seeing tonight are an estimate for a full year's worth of expenses and is for year 1 only. Cost in subsequent years may be less, as our one-year expenditures include startup costs that are shown in the other cost column. So examples of other startup costs include but not limited to training, equipment needs such as a car, vest, safety tactical gear, uniforms, and that's just to name a few. So starting with option number one, if we would partner with the borough, the estimated salary and benefit costs that were provided to us by the borough chief of police is $107,250. As I mentioned, in the third column is the other cost column, and these include startup items, as I mentioned, such as equipment and training. So we were provided a cost of $61,149 for all in 1 year cost of $168,399. The cost estimates that you see for creating our own police force was gathered from surrounding districts that have already implemented their own police personnel. The minimum salary shown in this example is an estimate of a basic police officer, and then the high end of the scale that you see is representative of a chief of police. So the salary cost estimates range between $51,000 and $98,000. And then below you'll see the benefits. The minimum benefit estimate is based on the low end salary and is inclusive of payroll taxes only. Then the maximum benefit amount shown is based on payroll taxes based on the high-end salary, as well as potentially needing to offer them district benefits. If we were to create our own police force and hire a retired police officer, they might not need those benefits. But I built them in as a maximum. So then you can see the benefit cost estimate ranges anywhere from $11,742 to $49,752 for a total cost of salary and benefits for one officer in the district ranging between $62,742 and $147,752. Again, we're going to have some startup cost based on other districts. That's estimated at $60,000 for a total year one cost ranging from $122,742 to $207,752. And then the last option we looked at is contracting with Geforce Security. So they provided us with a cost for a security officer with no administrative duties at a rate of $50 an hour. If we would have that person be here for a total of 8 hours a day, 187 days a year, that brings that cost to $74,800. They did note that if we would want to add on administrative responsibilities to this person, the cost would be additional, but they did not provide us those costs as of this point because the administrative responsibilities can vary between district to district. So again, these are the base estimates for year one only.
Okay. You want to?
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, now I can figure if I'm on or off yet. Different considerations. I've been here since 2000 as a school counselor, lived in the borough longer than that. And not just the borough, but the country as a whole. Things have changed. And I just really see us, at this point in time, we're the only school in Franklin County that does not have a school resource officer. Fanet Metal has a resource officer. I was texting Chris Carroll, our former superintendent, and this was a topic that started in 2009 with her. She's not sure if that occurred previous to her being here, but every Tuesday, the guidance staff meets with the building principals as well as our school social worker. And we talked about just the last 3 weeks at the high school and some things. And we had a homicidal student. The police helped us intervene with that. We've had a lot of hardcore children and youth issues. And you tend to see more children and youth issues with younger kids, because as kids get older, it's not as common. But there's a lot of ongoing investigations. And at the high school level, I used to worry about students engaging in troublesome behavior. But I'm more and more worried about parents coming into the school with custody issues. I know custody issues have always been, more of an issue at the elementary and middle school level. I think our high school kids can, have better ability to talk to us and say, this is not supposed to be happening. But we have at least 3 parents under investigation where children and youth are investigating. And we worry, you always worry in the back of your heads for the safety of the school, that those parents will come to school. I can't see my kid at home. I'm not allowed to have contact with my child, stepchild, whatever it is. Where are they? Well, 6.5 hours out of the day, they're here. So we do have a lot of children and youth issues. We have, there's one, we have parents supplying our kids with drugs and alcohol, and they make their way into school. It's a little more sneaky, these days. Back in the 80s, you could just walk down the hall and you could smell cigarette smoke, you could smell marijuana smoke. With the vaping these days, you can't smell it. I've never out of my 20-some years of the boys' restroom has smelled so fresh and like cherry or whatever they're vaping, but it's a little more hidden these days and harder for us to deal with. As a firefighter for the last 30 years, I know the incidents we run in town are totally different than we ran 30 years ago. We had a parent this past weekend who ended up at crisis, parent of several students, mental health, and it was homicidal, and wanted to cause harm to many people. And we have parents who call 911, and EMS comes to deal with them. And the parents, we've had parents who've locked themselves in their bathrooms or their bedrooms with the rest of the family, and because they're afraid of their kids at home. And then those kids come to school on Monday. So there's a lot of reasons, and I don't want to, again, it's one of those things, things hit the newspaper, and it's that 0.5%. You don't always hit the front cover with academic awards and sports and all those sorts of things, but when something bad happens, it hits the front page. So, there's just a lot of issues out in the community, and people who live in the Borough, Shippensburg Township, and in the Shippensburg School District, their kids come here. So, that's how things work. I know. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. But there's a lot going on. That's what I'll say.
Thank you, Dave, Christy, and Sherry. Final statement that I'm going to make, and I'm going to digress just a little bit, and then what we would like to do, if any of you feel compelled or you feel strongly about this issue, we would love for you to communicate and share your thoughts with us. We have a microphone there. Troy, that's the microphone we would use, right there. But I'm just going to wrap up the panels component of this by saying that I have this, I should call it a dream or whatever. Before my tenure is over here in Greyhound country, I think we have a real opportunity as a school board and a school leadership team. We have a foundation that is reaching out to us and wanting to partner with us, and we've got board members that are making that happen. I can barely contain my excitement about that. We've met with university personnel recently. They're reaching out to us. They want to partner with us and whatnot. And then we have a borough that is reaching out and would like to partner with us, and they've already, in the short tenure that I've been here, have helped us out tremendously on a few occasions, and they continue to do that. I just think we have a real opportunity as school leaders here in Shippensburg Area School District to bring this community together in a way that maybe it hasn't been done before. I was here 14 years ago as an assistant superintendent, and I don't think I fully appreciated all the resources that were here at that time But this time around, maybe a lot older, a little smarter, a lot grayer. I see an amazing opportunity to really bring this community together in a lot of ways, including safety and security for this school community and beyond. And with that, I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to turn things over to you all, and I'm hopeful some of you will share your thoughts with us. Please do.
To hit a button? Or am I good? Okay. I actually just have a couple questions first, if you wouldn't mind answering those. So what exactly does partnering with the borough mean?
I'll try to answer that. I think there's a lot of opportunities, not just safety and security, also with field usage and things like that, and just basically sitting down and collaborating with them on community issues. So I'm sorry I can't really define that a whole lot further, but there's I think there's a number of things where there's opportunities. Dave?
Did you mean specifically as far as a school resource officer?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was kind of leaning towards. Does that
So-
mean that they'll give an officer to the building?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
specific to like a school
Right.
resource officer. Okay, and
If I could also clarify, according to Chief Miller, in addition to that officer, and one of the advantages I see of this point is that if there is something that's happening over the weekend or the evenings with our families, if there is a domestic dispute, criminal activity, or some of the extreme things that Mr. Lindenmuth just alluded to, I do see an advantage of us, of our personnel being able to proactively inform the school leaders here regarding those things so that we can help take care of that child as they come to school.
sure.
And I'd just like to add on to that. The borough has said that they're willing to train more than one police officer.
Okay.
So like if that police officer is out sick for the day, they could provide a different officer so
Okay.
there would be coverage
Okay.
during the whole school year.
I would also just add, I'm sorry. I would also add, just in some informal conversations with Chief Miller, he and his team really want to improve that relationship. If their officers have some discretionary time, I would like to invite them to come into the buildings and in uniform and engage with our principals, our counselors, our teachers, our students, have a breakfast, have a lunch, but just a presence in a very positive way, not only when there's a crisis or when we have to call them for a reason. So so students and staff would have an improved comfort level.
Okay, thank you. Right now, this discussion tonight, is it primarily for the high school or is it for all the district buildings?
I think I can answer that. Ideally, down the road, we would like to have more than one person. We do think that probably to get things started, the major focus would be at the secondary level, but also some degree of presence at our elementary levels as well. But the secondary would probably be the primary focus. Please correct me if you have any other perceptions on that. And by the way, I apologize. I did not introduce our new superintendent starting November 7th, Mr. Bill August right here. Bill, don't hold back. Where Bill is at currently at Big Spring, they do have 2 full-time school resource officers. So Bill comes in with a lot of experience in collaborating with and partnering with the community in that regard and how it's working at Big Spring. And everything that I've heard regarding what Bill has shared and what others have shared in that situation, it's a really healthy relationship.
Thank you. I just have 2 more questions. Thank you for your responses. Hypothetically, if we have an actual force, and this kind of goes along with your previous response, if we have a force, would that allow us to have a resource officer at each location, depending on how large that force is?
Let me just share, I am a school board member at Gettysburg School District. I'm the vice president of the board there. We recently lost our school resource officer. I won't get into all the details with that. We did a request for a proposal from all of the municipalities that were within a reasonable part. We did get we only got one response, and that was from Geforce. There were some limitations that Geforce had that they couldn't provide for us, so we did go down the route, and with Gary Garter's help from Chambersburg, we have developed our own police force. We have a director, and we have 2 people that'll be under them. We have more than 3 schools and only 3 people there, so they will be moving around periodically to all the schools within the Gettysburg school system. Gettysburg has 600 kids less than Shippensburg. But we decided out of necessity at Gettysburg to put about $300,000 into creating our own police force. And that doesn't cover all the startup costs to get us going, automobile and other equipment and so on. So,
Okay. I think my final question was answered, so I'll just make some comments. There's a sense of relief that I have every time we get an alert, and then we know there's going to be a police presence here. The day that police officers actually escorted our children to the buses, to home, and there's a lot of presence in the community, that just was a lot of peace of mind, because when you're working in a different town or whatever, and you know that your child is being looked after, I think that means a lot to me. So I'm a huge advocate for whatever. Any one of these options would be good. I understand it comes down to a fiscal decision as well, but one thing, I think if I was to pick out one that I would probably promote over the others would be the Borough partnership or the force, the actual school force. My only hesitation about a school force, I'm familiar with the Chambersburg School District, and I would just want to advocate that that school force would breach relationships, form relationships with the other emergency responders in the community. So it's not, this is our territory and that's it, but there's some relationships with all the groups throughout the community. So thank you for exploring this.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Brown. I've been a parent here for, 18 years. And I feel like I should give a little bit of background. 20 years of law enforcement investigation, 15 years mental health investigations. So I understand what you're doing, and I applaud what you're doing. You guys are going to run into a lot of, there's going to be some people that are going to say, it's too much money, too much money. You go down and ask the parents of Uvalde how much money they would have spent to save their kids' lives. It's not an issue. So, I mean, whatever we got to do to make our kids safe. Now, my concerns are, I'm a little worried that we're going to have one officer. So that officer's here. But there's an issue over at the intermediate school. Sometimes it takes me 20 minutes just to get through town. So I understand we got to start somewhere, and we definitely understand that. So, I think in my head, how can we get better? Because I think one officer, I thank Christy here for explaining that, the borough is willing to train other officers. That's great because, as you know, the school resource officer then is going to get dragged into hearings. He or she's going to be gone out of the building. So that's going to be an issue where you're going to need other people. And I was talking to Dr. Moyer here before. My oldest daughter graduated from here, and when she went to her visit to her university, she was sitting there talking to another girl from Scranton area. And my daughter was shocked when she found out that Scranton, they had to go through metal detectors. So I would applaud and employ everybody here to say, start thinking about putting some metal detectors in the school, because I think that's the first step. Like if a student wants to walk in here with a gun, they can. There's no one going to stop them. As we said, parents are going to walk into the school district. Yeah, they have to be buzzed in. They could shoot right through the glass. Because of my background, I walk around and I go through the schools when I'm here with my son or my daughter attending sports activities. I'm like, easy target, easy target, easy target. And I'm like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen here in Shippensburg at some point. I don't have the answers. You guys don't all have all the answers, and I'm not expecting to have the answers. I'm just trying to think outside the box. What can we do today, tomorrow, to make sure it's secure and safe? Like, I know in the past there was 2 incidents within the last 2 years. Students brandished a gun. Now, it was a BB gun. I know that. I investigated it. So, like, I know what happened. I want to be transparent with the community as well, because I guarantee you not too many people know about that incident. So as a community, a safety standpoint, we got to be transparent with everybody and say, look, this happened, instead of saying, well, we had this incident, we don't really want to talk about it. I understand on a HIPAA and on a privacy, but you know what? People need to know about a homicidal student. Let's all put our heads in the sand and say, it doesn't happen here at CHIP. It does, okay? So like I said, I will support anything that's going on at this point, as long as it's going to be a long-term effect. I'm very proactive about things. I don't want to be reactive. This is a proactive step. Let's do something about it. Let's hopefully grow. If it was up to me, I would say, look, let's get our force. Let's get 3, let's get 4 people, whatever we can do. Let's look at whatever grant there is. The Pennsylvania grant is a great thing. There is a crap ton of money out there that we could use. Like, I know we can go up to Rob Kaufman and start talking to him and say, help us. There shouldn't be anybody saying no to that. And I guarantee you, Rob could come in and say, oh, let me help you. Let me figure out what needs to be done. So I just thank you for your time. I don't really think I have any.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aaron Rotz. I actually have a daughter at Nancy Grayson and was there during that incident there. Just a couple of thoughts I had. What kind of admin duties would a resource officer do if that was an option?
I see. Let me see. There, I'm back on. So there are a lot of compliance things as far as Act 44 and bringing law enforcement agencies in for different drills. There's certain trainings that staff need on everything from child abuse training to, we've done Stop the Bleed training with our staff, those sorts of things. I see one of the real big things if we have our own police force is we don't have any policies, we don't have any procedures, we don't have a complaint process. How do we supervise? There's a lot of stuff to get the ball up and running. So that's I think they're, a biggie.
Okay, and then this was just another thought. I guess it sounds like you guys are maybe leaning towards either having your own force or partnering with the borough, but that would be initially just the one officer here primarily. Would it be possible or an option in the future to have the Geforce Contractor be the sub for all the satellite schools, intermediate schools, elementary schools, and they wouldn't be responsible for activities, events, football games, stuff like that, but the borough or the assigned borough or obviously the Shippensburg school police would maybe be the person who handles those extracurricular type of things, and the contractors would just be at the satellite during school hours.
I think what you're talking about is a possible hybrid solution.
Yeah, yep, like a split.
And I do know that Geforce is in the Southwestern School District, where I served as middle school principal for 15 years. They do have an officer in all, they have 7 officers, 1 in every building. Mm-hmm. A hybrid solution may be what's best for us, but we plan to take your information tonight from the community back with the study and research that we've done and conversations we've had with our subcommittee of the school board and try to come to consensus. So this is very valuable to us to hear from you and to hear some of the suggestions.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of piggybacking on what he said about, the officers here and something happens elsewhere, it's lag time would be the same as the regular, the state or the borough police reacting, I would think. So
the one thing I would just say, and again, I don't want to heavily, share that I'm going in one direction or the other right now, but if it was a borough police officer with the communication and radios that they have with the several other members of that team, I do believe that they could be on site anywhere on our campus schools pretty quickly,
Yeah.
even though they may not be personally present in the building at that time.
Yeah, and my initial thought when you first started going over the presentation was I was kind of personally leaning towards the contractor, because it sounds to me like that's something that could be up and running quicker. But then you bring up the relationship of kind of behind the scenes with EMS and fire, kind of having like a more personal relationship and stuff with the borough and the district and the community itself, which that actually sounds beneficial to me as well. So,
Thank you.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Hybrid solution.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Scott. I have a kindergartner, myself. But my question is, what is the current status of like the borough police interaction with the school district? Do they patrol the schools? Do they come by on a regular basis? Do they actually go into school and walk around? Is there a patrol presence normally during the day?
I'll start off and turn it over to you, Dave. We have a very strong relationship with Chief Miller and the borough police. There were times where we struggled with event coverage where by just a phone call, they've provided that for us free of charge. So I feel our relationship with them is very strong. They have. I've been helping out at the crossing guard area with Mr. Barnes at one of our most high traffic areas or most challenging areas. Would you agree, Mr. Barnes, on a couple of occasions? And it's not unusual to see 2-3 borough police cars during that half-hour period of time that we're out there doing crossing guard duty from the borough police. Also in the morning, we typically get a lot of good coverage. So to some degree, they have really reached out and provided a pretty good presence for us, not so much in the buildings, but on the exterior. We've been very happy with the services we've gotten.
Have you ever thought about just having them come into the building during the day on a random basis to all the different schools?
Yeah.
An actual physical presence where
Chief Miller,
see 'em and stuff
Chief
like
Miller
this?
and I have had that discussion, and the possibility of coming in, having breakfast or lunch, engaging with the staff, with the students. We're in discussion about that. He's pretty new to the Shippensburg area. I'm here on a temporary basis. I'm almost here for 5 months. So, I don't want to turn any permanent decisions that Mr. August would inherit that he would have to deal with that he may or may not be able to support. I want to make sure we have his comfort level and the comfort level of our board with some of those issues.
Right, I'm just still.
I think the one thing, the borough police will respond if there's an incident, but they have their competing, responsibilities, as far as patrolling the community, the stores, the shops. And during the daytime, they go to court. They could be you could have, all the officers on duty, but on certain days or public defender days at the district justice office, and you could end up with 0 in town if they're picking somebody up at Cumberland County Prison or they're in court, that sort of thing. So the advantage here is then to have.
I know the long term having somebody physically here.
Right.
That's great. But now, till that happens, could be next year, 2 years from now, correct? Basically, is what's going on, because you got to find the resources, you got to pick what you're doing, you got to do whatever. But as a community, we pay for a police force. We pay for that service. And you said yourself to go around like looking at shops. What is more important in the community than our children?
Well,
if they can't walk through the building just once a day, it doesn't have to be every building. Just one building where somebody physically sees them pull up. The children see them walk around the hallways. It takes minutes.
Right.
It doesn't take hours out of their day. They're not doing anything, but just a physical presence deters people from, okay, there's actually somebody here, not like, oh, well, I saw them at the crossing guard this morning. Great, they're on the street. But at 11 o'clock, in between classes changing, they see a police officer walking down the hall. That right there, just a physical presence, a simple 10 minutes out of our paid for community service is that not as important as them sitting in a parking lot downtown or walking down the street giving somebody a ticket on their car?
Right.
Yeah, that's something that should be kind of discussed and brought up, and I feel strongly about that should be, as a parent, something that is currently happening. Before we start, getting into how we're going to get our own police force in here, there's things we can be doing now from a security standpoint that are simple, and that's basically, we're already paying for that service.
Right.
Yeah, then you can get into the other stuff like the hardware on the doors and whatnot too, that also add on. But that's just why I was wondering, and I guess my question was answered, there are really no police officers that spend any time physically walking through the building on any random schedule.
They're welcome to come in anytime.
Well, that's what I'm saying though, but as you guys, as a security and safety committee, you should be asking them like, hey, is there a problem with you just coming down here and walking through the building during one of your patrol routes or what like that? You got time to stop in at our buildings and just physically walk through the halls for 10 minutes in one door, make a quick hot lap and out the door.
I just want to say again, Chief Miller and I continue to have that type of discussion, and he's certainly giving it consideration.
I hope he gives it a lot more consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just so that everyone's aware that the state troopers do come in probably, I would say at least like once a month, Dave, correct? And they do walkabouts with the administrators, so there are state troopers visiting us.
Mrs. Luffy, would you mind repeating that? I'm not sure everybody, could you hear that?
Hello? Okay. Just the state troopers from PSP, like they do come around and do walkthroughs with the administrative team. I would say at least once a month, maybe more regularly than that. In addition, I am out back for the morning drop off for parents, and there is probably 4 out of the 5 days at least a borough policeman out there present in some aspect, visible to parents dropping off and students arriving via car.
My name's Travis Hoover. I have 2 students in elementary school, and this has been a long time coming. I think we definitely need it before it's too late. Hopefully somebody being here can at least deter it, if not stop it. Lots of good things. I like the idea of the hybrid situation where maybe we can use the Geforce crew to help supplement the borough. Not to say we owe it to the borough or anything. I know the price tag's a little high, but every time there's an issue, those guys are here. The other week when we had all the schools locked down, I know personally I talked to Officer Tommy Young in at the borough, and he's like, first priority. He was at Nancy Grace, and he said, I was at that front door, and I didn't leave it until the kids left. Those guys are there. So I think they have a lot of dedication to the community, a lot of connection to the community. People know them. They know the town. If there ever was an issue with an intruder going one way or another, they know the layout. They know the neighborhoods. Not to say if we hired our own crew, they wouldn't eventually learn that or know that. If you have a third party coming in, they're not from around here. They don't know the town. They don't know the people. I think the connection's going to mean a lot in the future. As far as looking at the prices and stuff, Geforce looks real good, but are they considering a police car? Or is that guy just a guy showing up in his personal vehicle? Whereas with the school's car or the town offering a car, that cost is going to be there, How much of a car do we need to buy or stuff like that versus what's being offered? I think with the town police, you're going to have more equipment to be utilized, plus the network of, like you guys said, they can call the other borough police to be at a building before they can get across town. Whereas if we have just another party doing that, we're not going to have that interweb where they can collaborate together. So I think that even though the price is bigger, maybe it can be refined more, but I think that's definitely going to be the better way. There's a dedicated group of guys there in our own borough that, like you said, they're ready to work with us. They're ready to make something happen and be here.
Thank you.
I just want to echo a lot of what's actually, whoops. There we go. A lot of what's already been said. This decision is long overdue. You said 8 superintendents. That can be measured in decades. That's for such an important decision. But I also want to simply bring up, officers do so much more than protect our students and staff. They build relationships. They're positive role models. They can offer educational programs in our schools for our kids. And just their mere presence can sometimes reinforce the importance of making smart decisions. I'm the mom of a 3rd grader at Nancy Grayson. Of course, I experienced the second day of school issue with my kiddo huddled on a concrete floor for a few hours. He had a similar situation in kindergarten where schools went into a shelter in place. I don't know exactly what they called it at that time, but school went into a shelter in place. The buses were shuttered. Parents had to come and wait in line and pick up our kids who were brought out one by one. Police could not have stopped those incidences. In both cases, they were outside of the school setting, but it was just a comfort to know that they were there. So yes, this is absolutely a long overdue decision, and I encourage it. I don't have a position one way or another about SRO or your own police force or a third party. Just definitely look at all the pros and cons, but let's please make this a priority.
One thing regarding Nancy Grayson into Monday morning is Chief Miller reached out to us, and we had, I can't say we had a lot of time, but we had time in the sense that elementary starts a little later. Mm-hmm. But I just thank Chief Miller. He said, I want to get into Nancy Grayson first, and I want to get out of there so those kids don't see anything because they've already been through enough. So, if you see them, you might want to say that to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Glad you shared that.
Good evening. My name is Claudia Garner, and yes, I work for Cumberland County Department of Public Safety. We're the ones taking all those 911 calls. But I'm also here as a mom. I have a sophomore now. He has told me so many stories of things that have occurred in this building that frightens me, quite honestly. Things that, okay, we all used to do things when we went to high school, right? I mean, but some of the things that they do these days, I'm very surprised to hear what happens in the restrooms whenever teachers aren't around, and then no one wants to say anything because they don't want to get people in trouble. But anyway, with things like Safe to School or Safe to Say for the schools, I hope that program is being reinforced to the students, that they can anonymously share information to protect each other and everyone else in the community. So I hope that program is being reinforced to the students on a regular and consistent basis. But just a couple observations. We cannot send our children on a field trip without signing off on a waiver, right? Somewhere that liability has to rest. So if we can't send our kids to a field trip without a waiver and saying that, we're taking on that responsibility, we understand we're not holding the school liable, whatever, that safety and liability is taken care of for field trips. Why wouldn't we do that on a daily basis? I don't understand why it would even be a question not to do anything. Like you had said earlier, doing nothing is really not an option. I agree 100%. We wouldn't put our kids in a car without giving them insurance. Why would we send them to a school building where we know things can happen and likely will happen? We don't want it to happen here, but why wouldn't we insure as much as we possibly can to protect them? Just a couple of things for those who don't know. Shippensburg Police Department, obviously, they're our public safety partners, so I'm 100% for them. And Chief Scott did a lot for our community while he was here as the police chief, so that should not go unrecognized. But the Shippensburg Police Department, if they don't have a current incident that they're working on, they're looking at a maybe minimum of 2-minute response to maybe a maximum of 20-minute response based on where they're at and what they're currently involved in. And they can't take, if they have someone in handcuffs at gunpoint on another incident, they can't just drop that and run to the school because there's an incident happening there. They do have competing interests as well. Everyone is just as important to them. Their backup would be PSP Carlisle, PSP Chambersburg. You're looking at 30 minutes for some, depending on where they're at. They also have the Turnpike. We're fortunate to have them close by and some emergency gates that they can get here quickly. Shippensburg University Police. There is a lot of backup and support, but you're looking at time. And if there is an active shooter in this school building, you don't have time. There is not time to wait. Seconds count. So having someone somewhere in this district is important. The hybrid solution was number one on my list. Why can't we start, if the end goal is to have a district police department, let's start with one. But let's also contract either with Geforce or the Shippensburg Borough, or maybe the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office. I know Big Spring used to do that. They contracted with Cumberland County Sheriff initially before they hired someone full-time, right?
We were with Newville Borough.
Newville.
We went to the Big Spring went to the county.
Okay, there you go. But explore options like that, perhaps, that we can do some kind of a hybrid situation, but start with one. If the end goal is to have our own district force, start with one who is, first of all, young enough that's going to be here to see it through, and interested in the students. No disrespect to any retired police officers, but we need someone who is young and wants to get active and involved with our students. I'm just talking during school hours right now because there are contracted special police that you can get for events after school. But start with someone who can actually build the force and then integrate with contracts for now until you can continue to build that up. Christy, I know you did a great job with your cost analysis. I would challenge that those one-time costs are not going to be one-time costs, because as events in the real world are happening, police tactics, equipment, mandates and training and things like that are consistently changing. Chief Scott could probably verify that. You know, their ballistic vest that they buy today might have a 10-year shelf life, but the first time it gets damaged from an incident, he's going to need to replace it. So they're not going to be a one-time cost. Uniform, they get into a scuffle with somebody, their uniform gets ripped. I can't put that back on. You need to replace that. So they're not really one-time costs, some of them that were identified. And if you start with one, then give them a police car. Give them police cars so they can get to the other campus locations. I know I would also challenge if we can do that, where we have one person that starts and we continue to build upon, have them build a committee that talks to Cumberland Valley, where they had school resource officers contracted with Silver Spring Police Department, and then they actually implemented their own police department, much like what you described Gettysburg's done. Talk with all of those districts that have already been there and done that. Don't reinvent the wheel. Learn from what they've already done. Some of the other districts, like East Pennsboro and Mechanicsburg, they have a very close-knit relationship with their police department, but they'll all tell you they're limited on staffing too. The last police consortium testing that took place, they had very few applicants even come take the test, let alone put them out into the workforce. So the staffing issues are in the police force as well. So we have to be conscious of that. But there's been 37 school shootings so far this year, in which 110 have been injured and or killed. So doing nothing is not an option. We're all being asked to do more with less, with competing projects, limited time and limited budget. We get that. But as Jeff and some of the other ones have said, you can't put a price tag on your child's life, on anyone's life, any adult or child in this building or any of the buildings across campus. But the level of seriousness and the impact of the sustainment of life and the potential of the severe consequences, I don't see how you couldn't have at least one dedicated person in the district working solely just for that. Dave pulls double duty and does guidance counseling and safety. I mean, that's a full-time job in itself. That can't be split. We can't be asking Dave to choose between helping someone through a crisis or dealing with the crisis that becomes of this result. So that's just not fair to you, personally. What else did I want to say? Other things that school resource officers and or a department that is for the school district You're going to have the salary and benefits, you'll have training, you'll have equipment, overtime, uniforms, all of their office supplies and their outreach programs, their cell phones, their training, their qualifying every year, all of the different things that they need to do just to be valued and effective at their job. I think that's it. Thank you.
Collaboration, though, with the borough is not just the borough helping us at our school. It would be a full-time position, correct?
That would be for one officer to be here.
Correct.
Yeah. But it's not that he would also be patrolling the town.
Not,
His
no,
job would be this district.
right. We're talking about competing time and competing interest. That person would just be here. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Marlon. I'm a relieved parent to hear that this is on the table. I'm just going to repeat a lot of things.
Marlon, would you move just a little bit closer
Sorry.
to the microphone?
Oh,
Thank
all right,
you.
Sorry. So, as a relieved parent, I just want to make a couple of points. Definitely, we have to do something. We've had lots of warning shots, close calls. We don't want something to happen. So we have to do one of these three options. It's up to, I'm not really concerned of which one. I'm not really concerned of the price tag. Money is no concern when it comes to my kids. Short-term solution, a presence in the halls now randomly at all the schools is a no-brainer. I mean, we should already be doing that. I'm really surprised that it's not happening, which concerns me. And I think it really needs to expand, it has to expand to all our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Angelique Brown. We have a 7th grader and a 3rd grader in the district. And I think, well, first of all, thank you for bringing this to the table and also involving us as the community. I think that is very commendable. And I think of myself when I'm at work and I get an email or I get a text, the schools are being shut down. It makes me feel comforted that we are being informed. We know that our kids are being taken care of. Speaking about the presence of police or security, I think that not only makes us feel good and it makes us feel comforted, but it will also make our children feel comforted. My sons love police officers. I mean, everywhere we travel, when we see one, they get a picture with them because they have a respect for the uniform. They have a respect for the officer. So if they see an officer in this hallway, to my children, they will feel safe. They won't feel like, oh, what's he doing here? So that's my first point. My second point is, I don't remember who mentioned about the metal detectors, but that was a great idea. But I don't know where that would fall in the tier of the grant.
Metal detectors aren't in the grant.
They aren't, okay. But that is a great idea. We know somebody who was just suspended for 7 days that goes to this school because they brought a knife to school. And how do you find that knife? Is it because somebody tells on them or how many backpacks are there knives in that you don't know about? That kind of a thing. So, that was a great suggestion, but maybe something in the future, it could be doable.
Thank you.
I wrote everything down because I'll probably forget what I wanted to say. So I wanted to begin by thanking the district for taking the safety of the students and the staff into serious consideration with these plans to bring more security into our buildings. As with any other parent sitting in this room, I can confidently say that they'd agree that there's no measure that we wouldn't take to protect our children. And having any one of the types of security personnel in each building every day would help greatly put my mind at ease. I know I have horrible anxiety sending my kids to school every day just because of the world we live in. While I appreciate the responsiveness of law enforcement to the threats that we've had, unfortunately, it's been proven that a large percent of incidents and tragedies that have happened in the past occur unknowingly and without prior warning, which is why I believe that having these personnel already in the buildings and prepared and ready could potentially be the difference between a tragic devastation and a controlled incident. In an analysis, which is what I sent you guys, done by the Secret Service in 2019, it showed a 29% response rate in less than 1 minute for a school with a resource officer, compared to a 2% response rate from an outside law enforcement. That's the difference between 1 minute and 5 minutes during a crisis is crucial. Not to mention, just the presence of such personnel may serve as a deterrent for unruly behavior, bullying, fighting, and take the added stress off of our staff during high traffic times, such as between and the beginning and the end of the day, the hallway passings and lunches. Also, along with the security personnel, I feel it's important to look into the other safety measures as well, especially if we're not going to put a resource officer in every building. Including the interior manual door locking systems that I've mentioned before, and improved camera operations. I believe that security personnel in each building is a great first step, and I applaud and support every effort to get this underway. When it comes to our children's safety and also our staff safety, all possible measures should be taken. One tragedy and one loss of life is too many. Being proactive is the best thing that we can do to prevent that sort of thing from happening here. So I appreciate that. And the only thing that I would recommend is looking into putting one into every building, because I appreciate that we want to start at the high school and the middle school, but when you look at percentages across the board of how many, I don't want to focus on shootings, but how many shootings happen and the percentages that happen in elementary schools versus middle school and high school. I have one in the elementary, I have one in the middle school right now, and I have one that will be coming up. And when I think about that, if we have one at the high school, my little guy's in James Byrd, what happens if something happens at James Byrd? And that elementaries are a target a lot of times. So what happens?
I'll say one thing that Fred Scott mentioned at a meeting that we had, and that is you want to have kids, elementary kids, have a good, favorable opinion of law enforcement when they're young. So as they get older, there's respect, but there's also the trust that if something is something's not well, that they'll approach them and they'll say something. So that's something we've talked about, several times here, about the importance of cultivating that relationship at a young age.
Okay, that was kind of partially answered my question.
Okay.
But sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm saying if we have, I don't want to say how do you value one life over the other, but how did you come to the conclusion to only put one in a secondary school? Or how did you begin that conclusion? Did you look at the percentages of school shootings and how many happen at high schools? Or is there more instances occurring specifically in the district at high schools and not elementary schools? Because a lot of school shootings do happen in elementary schools as opposed to a high school. And you were talking about being scared of parents coming in.
Right.
I feel like adults come into the elementary schools and provoke those incidences more, as we've seen in the past, as opposed to coming into high schools and doing that. I guess I'm just asking, what led that decision, and maybe why are we looking at starting to put one in a high school and not opposed to an elementary school? Just asking as a parent.
I think, and just off the top of my, we've talked about this for years, and we've always had the need for the police to respond here for the incidents, at the middle school and the high school. I think, for many reasons, and COVID, on top of it, we're seeing here, and I'm sure at Big Spring, that parents are, I would say, they're stressed, and then they're coming into the schools, and it's not always the best situation, and the family issues. So that's not an issue, years ago that we thought of as much as we do today. And there is a paradigm shift in that.
So, and if we're looking at just the 6 years that I've been here in Shippensburg, we need the police presence here at the high school and the middle school. They are calling for police presence more often than we ever have to for the elementary level. That's not saying that we don't value one over the other more so, but if we're looking at budgetarily, we're hiring one person, more of the incidents are occurring at the secondary level that involve the police officers. Now, with the hybrid solution, that may give some other options to be able to place people at the elementary as well. But if we're looking at hiring just one currently, and that doesn't mean long-term, we're not looking at more, but one currently, we have more incidents at the secondary level than we do at the elementary level that involve police officers.
So I guess my next question or challenge to that would be, like I said, most of these crises occur unknowingly. Like if someone's going to come in and do something, I say 8 out of 10 times, you don't know it's coming. So in the incidences that are happening, you are able to call police and have them come. Like you heard that threat online or wherever it came from. So you were able to call police and have them come, and you knew what was coming. If a crisis, God forbid, were to happen at this school and you didn't know it was coming, wouldn't it be more beneficial to have someone in the building already and to have them, let's just say you have one split between the high school and middle school because they are so close, maybe one split between the intermediate and Jamesburg because they are so close, and then have one at Nancy Grayson. Like instead of putting one here and one at the middle school, split one between, maybe if you're putting someone in the buildings, maybe spread them out across the campus that they're more accessible to each school. It's just what I'm thinking as I'm thinking about this. So you have one at each campus because, like I said, a crisis is a different situation to me than a situation that you know it's coming, you've gotten a threat, you're able to call, have them come to the building, as opposed to most situations where you have no idea it's coming and it comes unprovoked and unknowing. It's just my, I guess, suggestion and challenge to that. Having one at each building, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Nice.
Just a thought. So thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just weigh in just a little bit with my experience, I don't pretend to be an SRO expert, but I have worked at a spot that has grown their program. School safety is a holistic approach. You make schools safe by having protocols, policies, facilities, and regular checks on those systems. And personnel is a big part of that. I think everyone here is in agreement that we need to take a step forward on the personnel side. The thing that I've seen over the years is two things that are paramount are relationships, as Dr. Moyer said, that SRO having a relationship with the administration, the teachers, and building it in the hallways can be outstanding and a great way to prevent things from happening, and to be proactive on that side. Relationships between the district by having a borough or another police officer in the building, building those relationships with the borough to increase response times should we need them. And additionally, the other part that I would point out is that communication piece. That there are definitely, in my experiences, communication is paramount with the SRO and the administration to communicate, our needs and allow the police officers to do their job. So having, to my mind, having a trained police officer is like a really great option, because they have the background and we don't, as a district, necessarily have to train or maintain their training. And they already have a relationship with other police officers, not only in the borough, but in the county, that they can access. And so that relationship and communication piece, I think whatever option we ultimately decide to go with, those should be the drivers for that decision. And I would also say, I think, with the SROs that I have experience with, they just don't stay in one building. They're active at other buildings, for all the reasons that people said. I think there may be a perception that there just would be here, but on days when things aren't heated or they're not immediately needed, spending time at the elementaries, at lunchtime with kids, and I'm even aware of the SROs at Big Spring that are used as behavior rewards, playing basketball with the SRO. So there's a lot of positives that can be built out of that relationship if we get someone who's vested in our kids and our community. I think that's really kind of the advantage of one of those options, at least from my perspective. We want someone who is here, not just because it's a job, but because that's where they live and they love the school and the kids. So just wanted to throw those two things out. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just have one thing to say. Oh, here I go. One thing to say, and if I don't say it and I go home tonight, I will kick myself for not saying it, and Claudia will kick me too. Many of you know I'm Robin Wolf. My husband was Bill Wolf that was killed at the Las Vegas shooting. I have a very unique perspective standing here tonight. Okay, I'm just going to do this. Trust me when I say you don't want to be in the shoes that I have been in for the past 5 years, to know what it's like to lose somebody to an active shooter, to know what it's like to have to make those phone calls to those family members and to explain to your children what has just happened and that your life has been turned upside down. I never expected to have to go through what I have gone through for the past 5 years. So please, please, now is the time to do something. Now I'm not going to get that back in.
I had some colleagues consult with me when I told them that we were going to run a community forum on this topic. And they were saying, Al, what are you thinking? What do you really want to do that? You're going to be hearing all kinds of things. But I would just tell you, I was a little concerned that people wouldn't come and speak up. I was dead wrong about that, and I'm pleased to be wrong about that. I don't want to wrap things up if there's others that would like to share, but I do want you to know, on behalf of our administrative team, our school board that's in the audience and on live stream, and the panel that I've got up here with me, we have so many good things happening in this community, and I just want you to know on behalf of all of us how much we appreciate everybody taking time out tonight, and especially for those of you that stood up and shared your thoughts and just coming here and listening. I've personally learned a lot tonight, and I just want you to know how appreciative we are of that. Stay engaged. Stay engaged on this topic. Keep pushing us to move forward. Don't allow us not to do anything. And again, I don't want to cut anybody off that would like to share anything and anything else. Is there anyone else that would like to share before we wrap things up?
I just have a question. Is there a timeline on a decision?
I'm glad you asked that. For me personally, I don't have a lot of patience. I want to do things yesterday. But I realize that we need to go through a process. What at least my plan is, until Mr. August gets here and takes the lead on this, my plan is for us to consider everything that was shared tonight, to pull our subcommittee of our school board together, the Safety and Security Subcommittee that I introduced to you earlier, and see if we can come to consensus on an option or a hybrid option of some sort, and see if we can come up with some wording that we can put on the agenda for a school board meeting in the very near future. I think it's too early to be able to pull that together for our next meeting on Monday, but I do think it's reasonable for the following meeting as a discussion item to put something on that agenda with the blessing of the leadership team and the subcommittee of the board, where we would make a recommendation to the full board. So then what happens, what we try to do then is with the discussion item, we try to do just that, really kind of debate things out, look at the pros and cons, and then try to, if we can, to get the wording that we need for an action item for the following board meeting. So if I have anything to do with it within the next month or two, I believe we can make a recommendation and get it approved if we can come together and get a consensus. So that's at least my plan going forward. I don't know if Mr. August or any of our board members, especially Mr. Scott and Mr. Kressler, who's on the subcommittee of the board, if you have any thoughts on that. Does that sound like a reasonable strategy going forward? Chief Scott, what you're saying is too important for everyone not to hear. So,
thank you. As a committee, the people every day in the holes are the administrators and the principals and the counselors. As a committee, I like to have a meeting with them and the superintendent and to get the whole, what they're going through and what they need. We only get bits and pieces at each meeting. I like to know the whole story of what's going on. But excuse me, that can be done in a week.
If I could add something real quick back here. Back in, it was probably, have to help me, but in early budget season, this was something that was on there. And I've been advocating for it for a long time. So to echo Dr. Moyer's stance on like a quick, like a month or two, totally hope that we could be able to do that because I'm really supportive of this. Fine-tuning it, figuring out which plan, and that's something we hopefully will debate quickly. And as Dr. Moyer knows, as long as he gives me like a 4-day notice, time and place, I'll be there. So that sounds good to me.
Okay, so I would assume that it is at the top of the agenda at the very next meeting.
The very next public meeting is on Monday.
No, the board meeting, the next board meeting.
The,
This would be
the
priority.
very next board meeting is on Monday.
The following one, you said month.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
So meanwhile, is it unreasonable to get police presence randomly through the hallways of our schools until a decision is made? I mean, that's common sense.
I can share with Chief, we've already had informal discussions about that. We've had great presence on the outside. I'm with you 100% regarding the presence on the inside. I can certainly take that to him. I don't control the borough police or have any authority there, but I do know that Chief Miller he and I are on the same page. We're thinking the same way, and I believe he's very open to that recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought of a couple more things. So one thing, whenever you do decide if it's a school resource officer or if you're building a police department, whichever, I would recommend that the school district and the local police departments are involved in that interview panel and discussion. They can give you two different perspectives. So when you're doing the hiring process, whatever that is, even if it's contracted, that both parties be at the table when that decision's made. And then what is the process to hire the SRO or the police department? Who's on that hiring board? Who do they report to? But then coupled with that, what are the parameters that they're operating under and the punishments? And then how do you, as a board, ensure consistent enforcement of those policies? I know my child got kicked off the school bus and suspended from school for throwing an orange peel out the window. tragedy. I understand. However, there wasn't consistent reinforcement of the conduct that was occurring on that bus. I didn't raise a big stink about it. It's just an orange peel. He'll be fine. But we're talking about more serious things here. So how do we ensure that reinforcement of the punishments are consistent across the board? That's another question for you. And then lastly, I would like to hear from some of the school board members or any of you as to why nothing has been done up to now. What has been the pushback from, obviously all the board members here are in favor of it. So for the ones that aren't here, what has been said in the public meetings that it hasn't happened already, so that we as a community can prepare to give a different perspective to them at the next meeting?
I gotta watch what I say, but we had a meeting back in April or May, and we brought in the police, the sole, who was that, James Buchanan High School, and the fellow had been the school resource officer there for 14 years, and he was getting to retire. And somebody asked me, I don't know if it was Levi, or I think it might have been Stephanie Everly on the board, asked me why this hasn't happened. And I have written down here on a pad of paper, and I texted Chris Carroll, who was our superintendent from 2009 to 2013, and it was one of her recommendations. And we've had Miss Carroll, Mrs. Bender, Dr. Muma, briefly Dr. Hoover, Dr. Wilson, briefly Dr. Hoover, Dr. Suppo, Dr. Moyer, and we have Mr. August here. And it's always ended, there's never been a decision, at the board level. I mean, it's always been the recommendations of the administration. Mrs. Luffy, our high school principal, sets out a staffing request, and the top position she's requested on that staffing request since she's been here is a school resource officer. And that's not a high school position, that's not a business teacher, a math teacher, or anything like that. That's a position for the whole building, and it has been at the top of her request list for the last 5 years, I guess you've been here. And we've budgeted for it in the past, but nothing's happened. It was budgeted for back when Fred Scott was police chief. We need it to go to the board, and we need the board to vote. And that's what needs to happen. I can only talk about it so many times. I mean, I drive some people nuts as far as how much I talk about certain things around this school. That's where I'll leave it.
There hasn't actually been a vote before the board? It's just been
discussion? I believe there have been 2 times where we have allocated money, but then that's where it stopped.
And is there anything we as a community can do? I mean, obviously we can't put a motion on the table, but...
You show up at the board meeting.
Well, there we have it. So we could just, in community comment area, we'll just bring it up and ask for a vote.
I would
I'm sure
say
there's more to it than that.
I would say, once we go through this process and the administration gets a recommendation to the board to vote on, I think, through that process, hearing from everyone tonight, I haven't heard people say they're against having an SRO of some form. Right. It's just the which path, right, which option. So, I mean, that's really that process that we've got to go through to get a recommendation to the board. For them to make that final decision. So, talking with Dr. Moore or listening to Dr. Moore, I don't know that process is going to be too prolonged, because there is a sense of urgency to it. And if the budget line item is there and we have additional grant monies ready to go, it's just coming down to putting the best option for us on the table and moving forward.
What was the expiration on that grant money?
It has to be used by 23-24.
Okay.
And I would just add this, and I appreciate your remarks. It is a complex issue, but it's also a simple issue to some degree. And we need to do something. And my thought is, and what I'm going to be recommending to our board is, let's get it started. And let's get a person here. We can with every board meeting, we have discussion and action and consent items. We can evolve. Maybe it'll evolve to, in a couple of years, having our own police force. Maybe it'll evolve into somewhere down the line, having a person in every building. That would be ideal, obviously. But the main thing is, and I think sometimes we get stuck in trying to look for perfect, ideal solutions, and then we get paralysis by analysis. My thought is, if we can get a foot in the door and get it started, and get a partnership going, and build this community up, and so on, and we can evolve from there. We can add people from there. We can make adjustments on the fly as needed. But we've got to take action and make something happen, I feel, sooner than later. I'll be pushing for that. I do need to have the support of the board officers to get something on the agenda. So that's important. And then we have to have at least 5 board members. That's why we have 9 board members in the state of Pennsylvania. They're our governing body. We have to have 5 or more. I would love for it to be unanimous. That may not happen because we have a really passionate, intelligent group of school board members that really do analyze things, and they care deeply about this school community. I know that. In the 5 months that I've worked with them, I've seen them work their tails off, and they've supported me on a number of initiatives, even for an acting superintendent, probably who has no business doing certain things that I've been doing over the past few months. But they've been incredibly supportive. So I'm very fond of this board. I'm very fond of this leadership team, and I'm growing more and more fond of this community. And I really feel something's going to happen. But I do believe that the key is to get it started, and maybe start small and expand out and evolve from there. And along the way, but I think it can be done, and I think it can be done in a couple of months, and I'm hoping it's going to be done before this guy goes back into full retirement.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak? That's a pretty good note to maybe stop on. But I do want you to know that Mr. August and I collaborate on a regular basis, and he has been tremendous about engaging himself even before he officially starts here. And we do want to make sure that we are on the same page with our subcommittee of the board and then the full board. And I do believe at this point we already have a leadership team that is already on the same page, and we are ready to move forward with some recommendations to our board. And I am cautiously optimistic we're going to get a lot of support in that area, and we're going to be able to move forward sooner than later. And with that, I guess we'll officially adjourn. But one more time, thank you for coming tonight and sharing your thoughts. This was very worthwhile, in my opinion. Sherry, Dave, Christy, distinguished panel, anything else to add?